Into the PFF NFL Daily, where we have some very serious news here, Sam. Deebo Samuel has unfollowed the San Francisco 49ers on social media. Is it on Instagram? Is it on all social channels?
Appears to have removed any mention of the team from his Instagram profile, is what I'm reading right now.
All right. For those of you who have been following closely, this is very serious. This is how the generation conveys displeasure.
These are the kids do it.
This is how the kids do it these days. So Deebo's upset with, by the way, he plays for the San Francisco 49ers, which is why it's news.
So far.
So obviously, Deebo wants to get paid. He's seen Davante Adams. He's seen Tyreek Hill. Stephon Diggs got paid just 2 days ago, and now it's Deebo Samuel, essentially the next day, 2 days later, whatever it was, coming out and making an Instagram statement, Sam. Let's interpret it once again. What does this mean? And then what are the 49ers going to do about it?
No, I don't care what it means. But I do think what we should do is talk about whether you pay or trade Deebo Samuel. And now this is the trend, right? Tyreek Hill. Kansas City decided, trade him away. We'll take the picks. We'll move on from arguably the game's most dynamic, game-changing force at wide receiver. And with Patrick Mahomes, we're okay. We'll make it work with other people. Green Bay decided a similar thing. No, they didn't. To be fair, Green Bay tried to keep Davante Adams. They just did a bad enough job of it that they weren't able to keep him, right? Raiders offered a little bit less money, and Davante was like, I'm tired of your crap. I'm out of here. So Green Bay kind of tried to keep him, but did such a bad job of it that he was out of there. But this is the world now. The Buffalo Bills kept Stephon Diggs. So we've had these three really high-end, high-profile wide receivers, two of which have moved on, one of which has stayed, and now Deebo Samuel is not alone. A.J. Brown's going to be coming up too, but Deebo is the guy, right, who appears to be up next in terms of this conversation. If you're the 49ers, do you keep hold of him, or do you ship him off and cash in with whatever you can get in a trade?
Deebo has a fascinating argument here because obviously the 49ers just used him as a running back last year. And he was unbelievable. 90.2 overall grade, including the postseason. That's despite a really high drop rate. Had 12 drops, actually dropped over 12% of his catchable targets. Usually that's going to crush your grade, but I think it shows how efficient he was at just converting first downs, making good on his catches. And then, oh, by the way, he went into the backfield and played legitimate running back. Not took a couple jet sweeps like he did early in his career, but took actual running back handoffs, which you and I have talked about through the years. It breaks defenses, right? I mean, the defense cannot account for a receiver as far as box count goes, getting the right players to defend the run, to fit against the run. So it is a massive advantage. So Deebo, completely different from, say, Stephon Diggs, Davante Adams, Tyreek Hill, or A.J. Brown, who you said. Those guys are your true, legitimate number one wide receivers. Deebo's a number one target, a number one option, but he does it in completely different ways.
Yeah, there's two ways of looking at it to me. There is the fact that he lines up in the backfield and he can be the absolute focal point of that 49ers offense and be the driving force. And in the playoffs as well, right? We talk about how important it is to step up your game in the postseason when the games mean more, where there's no margin for error, where you can't lose, where you're going home. When we got to the postseason, Deebo stepped it up, and he was the reason that they were as good as they were in the playoffs, and he won games. So you can look at it in that way and say, that man absolutely deserves to be paid, and they should cash in. You can look at it the other way and say, to what extent are the 49ers essentially manufacturing what Deebo is doing? And for a couple of years, we were looking at this 49ers offense and saying, where is their number one wide receiver? Where is it? And the answer was always, well, they have one. It just doesn't play wide receiver. It's George Kittle. George Kittle at tight end was their number one receiver. He was their number one wideout. He just lined up in line. And they had this collection of unusual skill set receiving players, whether it was Deebo, whether it's George Kittle, whether it's Kyle Juszczyk, whether it's then Brandon Ayuk, who's a slightly unconventional skill set of a wide receiver they drafted. They kind of assembled these guys when we were trying to figure out how they all fit together and whether there was some kind of perfect style of mixing all these guys in the offense at the same time. And it hasn't really worked that way. What's ended up happening is all the attention just went to Deebo, and he became this incredible, unstoppable force last season. And the other guys have been good compliments, but it hasn't been this like force multiplier of freaky skill set, freaky skill set, freaky skill set, and all of a sudden this entire thing is just impossible to stop. Where what I'm kind of coming around to is I think the 49ers can easily talk themselves into the idea of, we made Deebo. We can make George Kittle if Deebo leaves. We can make Brandon Ayuk if Deebo leaves. We can pick up another weird skill set guy in the draft because most people aren't looking for those players, and we'll be fine. We'll take 2 first-round picks, ship them off, and that's what we're going to do. I don't know that it's an unreasonable argument.
I think this is different, though. The actual running back skill set, I don't think you could just put anybody there. Now, if your argument is, yeah, the Niners have all these guys and they'll just do it differently, maybe that's fair. And the Shanahan scheme does have a nice little history of that. But Deebo's bringing something different to the table. It is difficult to take running back handoffs. It is a different world. Taking the handoff in their one-cut system and then finishing plays with power. Deebo is already incredible after the catch, second most forced missed tackles after the catch last year, behind only Cooper Kupp. That was on far fewer catches. But Deebo brings a little attitude to the end of runs as well. That stuff is different. There aren't many players around the NFL who can just play legitimate running back. And this has evolved from Deebo's first year. I thought he was unique as a rookie, taking jet sweeps one play and then running a legit dig route on the outside the next play. Those are 2 difficult things to do, different skill sets. But it is different, man, having Deebo as an actual running back. So you think the 49ers are going to take it as we can move on, not move on, but we've manufactured some of this, or are they going to pay him top 5 wide receiver money? Because that's essentially what he's probably looking for at this point.
I think they can definitely convince themselves that, obviously Deebo brings something to the table as well. Like, this doesn't work unless Deebo is a good player and capable of doing this stuff. But I think they can easily look at this and say, we had George Kittle looking like the best tight end of all time when we didn't have other options. We turned Deebo Samuel into this unstoppable hybrid matchup weapon. We drafted Brandon Ayuk in the first round, and he has some of the skills as well. We have a draft upcoming right now. I think they'll look at this and say, it might look differently. It might not be exactly the same. We might not be able to get just a Deebo clone and plug him into the exact role, but we're capable of making it work with the playmakers that we have. And we've got the chance to add some now. So if somebody's going to come in and say, hey, instead of you paying this guy $25, $30 million a season, how about a couple of first round picks instead? I think they'd look at that and say, hell yeah.
Really? I think 25 million, that might be the going rate. There's now 9 receivers making over $20 million per season. I think we might be getting into this world where the NFL has not been a very top-heavy league. I don't think as far as players getting paid goes. It's starting to get a little bit top-heavy, at least at positions that weren't like that before. Receiver being one of those. That's the trend. We've been pounding the table for receiver value over and over again. But you do need more than one, so it does limit your ability to build around them. So the big question here, though, Sam, remember Arizona, they came back. When Kyler Murray unfollowed them on Instagram, they came back with a statement, and the social media director has to be involved there. The GM has to be involved there. How does San Francisco handle this? What is the response, first of all, to Instagram? You got to take care of that first before you actually get the contract sorted.
Yeah, look, and I will say that for as problematic as Deebo lining up in the backfield is, and as impressive as he was last season, and as important as he was to the offensive success, he ranked 8th in terms of PFF WAR last season, just amongst wide receivers. So it's massively valuable and it's really important, but is it the same as Tyreek Hill and what he does to manipulate a defense every single play because of his deep speed? Is it the same as Cooper Kupp and Devontae Adams with their peerless route running and the ability to just be this monster high volume target every single play and those kinds of things? I don't know. And I would argue that the 49ers could look at that and say, it's great, it's nice. It might not be as valuable as $25, $30 million a year, which is what those guys are going to ask for. So again, it's not like Deebo's a fantastic player. Love the guy coming out, loved him at the Senior Bowl, love him in the NFL. He's so fun to watch. But now it's a different conversation because you're saying, well, okay, but how how fun is he? How good is he? Because now, is it $25 million good? That's our discussion. And it's $25 million or the draft haul that you can get for him.
All right. I'm going to agree with you on this. If it's 25 million plus, I think I'd flip him for picks. I think I'd get a whole bunch of
Yeah.
picks. If we're talking 20 million or so, I think it's a much more reasonable play. And I'll say this one more time, too. If teams have a schematic advantage to help build player value, and I think what you're saying, there's some truth to it. The Niners helped build Deebo's value, plus he's an awesome player. Maybe this becomes a future strategy for the Niners where they can continue to build up value. And now, at Deebo's peak, you trade him, you get multiple first-round picks, and that's a better team-building strategy overall. And it's one way to use Deebo Samuel's value besides just having him on the field. I'm going to lean with you. Trade Deebo Samuel, unless you get him for the right price, which is closer to 20 million rather than for 30. Let us know. What do you think? What should the Niners do with Deebo? And more importantly, you didn't answer this, Sam. What do they do on Instagram? Do you just post more Deebo Samuel pictures? I need some Gen Zers to chime in and let us know, how do you handle Deebo unfollowing everybody on Instagram or whatever he did? It's the PFF.